Would like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 5 p.m. January 21, 25 meeting board. And we have 6 board members at the table and we have Pat online. Welcome back. We have a quorum. So we have some awards and recognitions for you. Is that right?
We do. So I'm gonna jump over here and I'm gonna ask Nicole to join me. We have 3 awards and recognitions tonight. I think they're all recognitions this evening. So our first recognition is to Nicole Secreta, our Dean of Enrollment Management. She has received her endorsement in a SIM endorsement, Strategic Enrollment Management endorsement from ACRO. Interestingly enough, in a completely different world, I was helped to develop this, but it's a really cool endorsement to help her. She's leading great efforts in our enrollment team, and as she's growing, the college should grow. So there's a reason there's a parallel there. So thank you for your work to go above and beyond and receive your endorsement. Next up, we talk a lot about the professional development and the hard work that our team does to support our students in our community. And the perfect example of going above and beyond is the work our team does and supporting the efforts of their not just professional development, but their colleagues in the state. So Frankie Everett here, our Director of Financial Aid, has been elected. She's the president-elect of the Oregon Association for Student Financial Aid Administrators. And I will just say that they are very fortunate to have her at the helm, as are our students who are receiving our financial aid support. We've had a lot of change in financial aid between the change of the FAFSA and things in the last couple of years, implementing new systems, and we marvelously well due to the work of Frankie and her team. So congratulations and thank you, Frankie. And last but not least, I will ask Liz to join us in person, and on your screen you see Dennis Underwood. So Liz Butler and Dennis Underwood both work in our marketing communications department, and we received notification that RCC is ranked in the top 5% of Site Improve users, which is a tool to help improve your website. And the reason we are is because of the work they do. So it tracks who the visitors and who their users are with their site. And so the work of these two have helped us 5% of users, and that is perfect timing because we will be embarking upon a new website deployment in the very near future. And so we are very lucky to have their leadership and the back of the house website support. So thank you both, Dennis and Liz.
Thank you.
Hey, congratulations, Dennis, Liz, Frankie, and Nicole. We're so pleased that you're on this amazing team, and thank you for all that you do. Okay, we're now going to move to public comment, and I do not believe that there is any public comment. So we are going to move to college reports. The student government is Finn in one.
Yep, one.
Finn, yes, good. All right. Hello, Finn.
Hello, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
This is my first time delivering the board report. Does the student government representative typically screen share the board report, or do I just run through it?
Well, yeah, you can just sort of highlight it if you wouldn't mind.
Typically,
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. So student government is back after the break. Running through, we had a successful week of welcome on each campus. We had some highlights from that. We had a lot of increased activity on the app, in part due to a scavenger hunt that had around 77 unique participants. So that was really successful and exciting. We have some of our numbers from Aussie Cupboards service. So for Josephine County, we had a total of 67 households receiving assistance, with a total of 158 people across those households, 127 adults and 31 children. In Jackson County, we had 49 households receive assistance in the month of December, with a total of 137 individuals, 90 adults, and 47 children. Moving into our next section, our new student body president, Christian Smith, has been working to reach out to community resources. Three in particular are Rogue Community Health, the Mid-Rogue Foundation, and the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. We are shoring up resources to be able to share with students, and to build better organizational connections. There was a blood drive on Redwood campus, which received a donation of total of 22 units, exceeding the target amount by 6 units. Each unit can help around 2 to 3 people, meaning that this donation can help up to 66 people. And into some ongoing projects we have going on. The OCCSA, which is the Oregon Community College Student Association revival effort, is still ongoing. And that's being spearheaded by former student government member Alito Love, who is serving as a student representative. And currently around 10 of the 17 community colleges have joined that effort. The student initiated fee, we are still passively gathering signatures and developing plans and looking towards the formation of a task force to work towards the benefits, the potential pros and cons of a student fee. And then for our winter recruitment updates, we have a new officer who has joined the ASG RCC team as of the end of last term. Brian Tucker is joining as our new financial coordinator, and we're working closely with Jackie Jones, our student life coordinator, to help maintain our finances and allocations. Not much to update since last term ended, but we are up and going with the new team and excited to see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. That's nice to see all of the work and the community connections that you've made on behalf of the well-being of our students and their families. That's very nice. Okay, Mary Middleton.
Mary can't be here, but she did want me to tell you, I'm gonna send you all a note of thank you and recognition of the board or Oregon Board recognition month, celebration month. I'll send that to you all.
All right, so Mary will be sending us a note in honor of or in recognition of National or State Board Member Recognition Month.
World.
World, oh, is it world?
Appreciation.
World Board Appreciation. All right, moving on then to Faculty Senate with a written report by Judy or Michelle available. Alrighty, and then Classified Association, is Nikki available to give a oral report? She is not. Okay. Right, then we'll move on to board reports and the executive committee, and I remember it's Vanessa. So Vanessa.
We met together to help develop the agenda, and we spent quite a lot of time talking about the board evaluation tools, the agreements. What you see in front of you on the board agenda is the finale of our meeting.
Exactly, true. All right, we will then move to the Board Outreach Committee, and Pat, we're sad that you weren't able to join us for the workshop session. We did have a fairly robust conversation about that, but do any of the three of you have a report to share?
Pat, we'll get you the long list of meetings you're going to later.
Next Wednesday, we have a presentation at the Grants Pass Rotary Club. So
Will that be you attending, Pat?
it'll be me. It's funny to look at you, Gary, because you're looking off to the side and it's like I'm not making eye contact with you.
I'm making eye contact with you.
I'm having challenges here. So, but yes. And we do have another one scheduled for next month. So hopefully we'll start off, and Jonathan's rapidly getting his list put together for over there in that part of the county.
All right, and we will share with you our conversation, so you're brought up to speed about some potential. I think I'm looking into the camera now.
Yeah, you got it.
Some potential changes that would be coming up in the next couple of months. All right, anything else to add on board outreach? Okay, foundation board liaison. Maria? Oh, I'm sorry, OCCA, and that's you, Pat, again.
Yeah, I just sat through the legislative bill tracking, and they go through the priority list. They number 1 through 4, I think, and there's a couple number ones. Of course, the funding is a big issue, but more so right now is Senate Bill 458. The bill sponsor is Representative Neron and Senator Frederick, Senator Jana. And it really affects us as board members. And let me go down through the list of some of the things it does for us and to us. We would have to vote on every association that the college has with anybody. So let's say the cooks belong to the Federal Association of Community College Cooks. We'd have to vote as a board on every one of those associations. So it's not just the ACCT, all those guys, it is every association. That's one issue. It would mandate every board member to have a community college email. And that's probably not a bad idea, but that's just what it is. It mandates every board to have a voting student representative. So you would have a student that wouldn't be voted on by the population, they'd be voted on by the student government. And a lot of those, there's quite a few student governments in the state of Oregon that are appointed. So it gets to be not very democratic in the process. So, and then the last thing that comes in here, that it also allows for a $500 a month stipend to all board members. So there's a lot, there's a lot to be talked about in that. Now you understand the bill watching, they don't offer an opinion about it. They really don't. They identify the significance, and then whether or not the bill is supported or or offering in opposition depends on what the board says. And the board meets next month, so that'll be determined there. That's the biggest wild card one I can think of. There's several other ones that affect us. There's quite a few in the number 2 hierarchy that deal with the Oregon Promise. Some make sense. They talk about not lowering the requirements, loosening the requirements on some applicants. And I think that there's some I could probably buy into. There's some that talk about paying part-time faculty the same rate as full-time faculty. There's a lot. And I kind of recommend, if you're really interested, you can attend the meetings. It's not hard, and they're very detailed, and you find out a lot more about what we're advocating for, what we're advocating against. So then the last part of my OCCA presentation is next Thursday is Lunch and Learn once again, and going to be talking about the advocacy toolkit, which everybody ought to know how to use, and it helps the state association. So that's my report, Gary.
Thank you, Pat. I know that Jonathan did message me during the
Right.
month, and did you have anything you wanted to?
Oh, Pat just covered it beautifully. Same report.
Same report. All right. Okay, thank you, Pat. Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, now we're on board report D, Foundation Board Liaisons, Indra and Maria. Either of you have a report to share? I know that they've been on hiatus for a couple of months. Anything to share?
I've made an appointment with Cass, so I'm looking forward to meeting with her next week and learning more. I know I hear she's doing a great job and the foundation is rocking and rolling. So thank you for what you're doing.
Wonderful. All right, and I think you attend your board meeting, so do you kind of alternate if they have a board meeting? I think they had one in January,
Usually next week.
quarterly. Oh, it's a next week.
We haven't
tried-
decided about how to do
Try to go to
alternate.
all of them, so.
All right, well, we'll,
The
you,
three of us can talk.
okay,
about how to-
that sounds good. All right, so now we're moved to area 8, which, excuse me, area number 7, college updates. So we'll start with Randy, the president's report.
Yeah, I thought I'd take an opportunity to give kind of a little bit of enrollment update since operational updates are pretty quiet from me this month. I also for your packet did provide the kind of the OCCA board takeaway that's kind of a beneficial thing. And we've got some things on the horizon to you'll see Esam share a little information this evening and talk a little bit more about institutional effectiveness. But I wanted to, as we talk about what's going on at the college and how it compares, just take a couple moments to highlight. And so, Rochelle, you have a chance to pull up my slides by chance. So it's a quick 62 slide presentation. We'll be through it 2.5 hours. All righty, so moving on to the first informational slide. I wanted to highlight from the fall 4-week enrollment, the way the Oregon classifies the colleges. Of 17 of us, there are essentially 8 that are classified large schools and then 9 that are considered small schools. So by definition, we are the Oregon's definition, we are the smallest of the large schools. And I wanted to use the fall report to just do some level setting. And what has happened is we've lost a lot of our headcount enrollment across the state since the pandemic. And as a reminder, if you were to look left of these numbers, you would have seen a decline anyway. So we were declining going into the pandemic. We just declined drastically. So the community colleges across the state are down 17.5%. We're down 15.5%. You know, still when you look at from pre-pandemic to fall of 24. The next slide tells a bit of a different story though, and that is while community colleges are still down 14% and FTE, so now we're not talking about headcount, we're talking about basically the product we deliver. So our FTE, we have narrowed that gap and are essentially flat. We're down 0.5%, less than 0.5%. And if you look at the large school designations, we are the only one who's experienced that strong of an FTE rebound. And digging in a little bit deeper on the next one, what spring looks like is that spring is down about 1.5% from pre-pandemic. So what I will, and this gives you a little bit longer of that, this tells that story a little differently, where you started on looking at the left of the numbers, you're seeing that decline that was occurring anyway, and then of course the steep drop. But then over the last 3 years, the way we've rebounded really aggressively. So any modest increase next year in FTE for fall and winter is going to be back to above pre-pandemic numbers. And I wanted to show how that's not necessarily the case across the state. And that is attributable to the efforts of our team, the commitments they've made in our community, the willingness of our community to say, we want to work with you on these. And it's in a lot different ways than we've done it in the past. So the next slide is a perfect example of how we look different today than we have in the past. This is less about the numbers, which you can kind of see here, and it's harder to read for some, as this is our academic department FTE year to date. So it obviously doesn't have spring term yet because we haven't enrolled for spring term. But for summer, fall, and winter, our departments by FTE, and this year, for the first time ever, our GED and pre-college education is the leading academic department. Historically, it's been number 5 behind kind of the usual suspects of humanities, science, math, social science, computer science, bank up there, but humanities, science, and math are usually the top 3 and bouncing order sometimes. And so that was an interesting output. It's been a growing area, but one that's really important for us to leverage and say, how do we turn pre-college into college? How do we get those students to migrate into our traditional credit or even non-credit career programs to really help them provide those and meet those workforce needs? But that pipeline population, I'll call them, has been an interesting growth, and a lot of it right now is predominantly the English language learners. GED is growing, but not at the same rate as the other programs. When we go to the next slide, you see a little bit of a different story, and it's where it's important to tell, because while we talk about FTE, then you flip it and there's a difference. Why there are different conversations why FTE is really important to talk about in one setting and headcount in another. When you look at headcount, now you see where over 2,500 students have taken humanities classes, 2,100 students have taken social science, nearly 2,000 in math. So those lower division transfer departments are still our top unduplicated headcount. And that is going to be attributable to how many of our students need those courses for their program if they're going into career programs, but also who need them for transfer. So if I'm going to get a bachelor's degree, these are these. So these are the universal courses needed for any credential, that almost all credentials that we provide. So there were a couple metrics that we've set for ourselves to say when we set stabilizing enrollment as an institutional goal, and they are in order, looking at course completion rates and term to term and fall to fall persistence. So the next slide will show you some of the momentum. Oh, best. Get a chance to go back one anyway. Yeah, right, there you go. So this shows a little bit of when we track what we call course completion rates. And we were intentional about course completion over course success, because one of the things that we discussed was how many times does a student drop out of a class and they never return to school? So there are instances when dropping a course is in a student's best interest, but in a lot of this instant gratification reset society we live in, people just walk away and don't return. So we wanted to try to help them salvage a course, stay in school. And our first year really focusing on this was the fall of 22, where we saw the first time we went above 80%, and we were really excited, picked up a little bit of momentum. Then last fall, when we grew by 19%, so you can see kind of the enrollment, or the bars, not the line graph, but the bar graph, that huge jump in enrollment last year, which would be 2 from the right, we saw a slip in course completion. And there were a lot of contributing factors, last minute enrollments, last minute faculty hire. We weren't as prepared for the students who were coming in. And we saw some of that in this, as well as our fall to winter persistence of students. Interestingly, they both rebounded that next term when we had the ability to kind of get our feet under us. And then this fall, most recently, we saw about a little over 0.5% rebound. So we're not back up to that 80%, but point in the right direction. So what I will say is that this metric is still pretty flat, and we want to get and stay above that 80% threshold. This is one of those that is probably going to be more of a self-tracking, not a peer. Not a lot of our peers track this in this way, so we really can't compare this to our peers, but it's a metric that's important. And then the last one, I wanted to highlight this because this is that retention, and this is an example of our student success work in effect. And what you can see is, and the reason that 24-25 doesn't have a number is because it's that fall number. So this is kind of a lagging, it's a lagging indicator. So for the students who entered who were enrolled 23-24, over 46% of them are re-enrolled this fall. And that is a number that we have really been able to grow. I mean, it was in the mid 30s, upper 30s during the pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, it was low 40s, and now we're hitting upper 40s. And I will tell you that kind of growth over time is not insignificant. And that's one of the things that's really helped us grow our enrollment is not only are we out getting new students, but we're helping the students who come stick around and persist. And so they're going to benefit and be more successful as a result of that. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of how we're tracking the impact of all the work you tend to see in those monthly reports. And with that, I will conclude my report unless there are any questions or comments.
I just call it the academic slide. I
Uh-huh.
like your trends.
The
I
one
know-
prior.
Yeah, I
so-
remember you were talking about sort of like an early warning system or where faculty can, is that, would you contribute that process as? one of the reasons?
Yeah, the Save Our Students program, SOS, is a big, is a big thing that they've done. And it would impact both, right? So it's helping students complete, but also be successful so that they return for a future term. And a major thing there was when we first looked at that a couple of years ago, what we saw was, I think it was like almost 2/3 of the first reports were in week 8 saying you should consider dropping this course.
Mhm.
And so we had faculty and staff, and we've had a couple present on this a couple times across the state and that say, well, what if we turned an early alert into an actual early alert? And so by week 2, they ask faculty to let students know how they're doing. And the ability, and for that allows our staff then to know which students might be struggling, what outreach supports might be available to them. And so that has definitely helped us watch students be more successful is that, and there were other things like we tackled that term and we probably need to resurface around learning students' names and the power of that. But the changes to early alert are something that the roadshow that our team presents on that other schools are like, we thought of that.
Connection and belonging is important.
Other questions for Randy? I have one. So Randy, can the data or will the data be parsed in such a way that would permit faculty to see which groups of students did not complete?
So it already is, we call that disaggregated data. And one of the things that we owe our accrediting body is a follow-up report we completed was how we better leverage disaggregated data at our institution. So our academic departments have, the performance and the courses and how it performs to others and how different populations. So for example, one of the things that we watched and informed some decisions was we had science, and I want to say math too, add faculty who are able to speak Spanish because we saw that our students who identified as Hispanic were not performing at the same rates. And so, we said if we can have faculty who can speak their first language, and now all of a sudden we're anticipating stronger learning outcomes. They still have to, they're still taking the same course with the same learning outcomes, but somebody who can help them learn in a friendlier way can help out. So that's an example of looking how populations are performing in one of many ways.
Roger?
Yeah, I was just trying to remember, which is always a challenge. I assume that these, let's say the course completion rate, that'd be part of the key performance indicators. So we'll be seeing that as we go through, you've obviously set a goal. I'm curious, is 80% an acceptable goal, or have you got it at 90% for a target?
Well, I think when you look at past performance, right, 80%, if we were to perform there consistently over time, that would be outperforming our historical efforts. And so, I don't ask the outgoing person, she'll have us at 99% in about 5 years or so. No. I think looking at a target probably just north of 80% is where we want. Like I say, it's always nice when we can then say not just how are we comparing against our past performance, but how are other high performing schools. And so one of the things ESOM will do with his team is look and say, can we get this from anywhere and how does our data compare? And so it'll be something we mature, but they get really tricky on how we define. So we have terms that are so simple. Fall to fall retention. That's got to be really simple. But then the way they define that metric is really, is it full-time students? Is it who's this here? Is it degrees? Like, and all of a sudden you just, you get really sideways really fast. And so trying to get consistently defined data so you're comparing is it's efforts we have to do because our accrediting agencies are saying, you guys have got to do a better job at telling your peer comparison story. So we'll step up to the task and do so.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Juliet. You are the senior leadership team.
Today. So this is the month, one of the months that we don't have the written E-team report because of the closure and the break and time between terms. So nothing in writing. I can piggyback a little bit on some of what Randy shared. Since his slideshow, like we've done a lot of work in that the first couple days of the term starting. And so the numbers are a little bit better even than what he shared in there. And one of the things that we also, the fall to winter numbers. So you saw the fall the improvements in fall to fall retention. We're also seeing those improvements in fall to winter as well. So the students that start in the fall coming back in winter term. So really encouraging signs on when they come here. We know our students usually come here for a reason. And it's not to leave after their first term. So it's great to have them coming back and seeing improvements in those numbers. Lots of, our normal busy term startup stuff. If you saw a report, you would see people out and busy. They are also already planning for spring registration. So we might be starting, but the crew has already shifted to, how are we going to make spring registration even smoother for students? So we have a lot of work going around that. We have a consultant coming in to help us look at Rogue Central and do some system improvements and see what opportunities we may have. She will be here at the end of January to do some work with us on that, to see how we could even continue to improve that physical space and how they operate, and staffing and remote services, and any way that we can best be able to provide services for students. So we're looking forward to that visit. It's also busy curriculum season, so you can see that on the agenda. Those will start coming in as programs, new programs, leaving programs, and programs that have changed more than the percentage we're allowed to change without suspending and restarting. So tonight is the first round of those, and probably for the next couple meetings, those will pop in and out as our departments work through that.
All right, I would ask just a question now, because I know we're going to deal with this in a few minutes. Would a reason for the suspension of programs include that the standards are no longer relevant in the 21st century in modern business culture? So we've sort of outgrown ourselves as a society, if you will, and so these programs don't fit. That just, okay, because I read the descriptors and I thought, okay, it's very nicely written. And I wanted to make sure that that's what I was reading. Good, thank you.
Yeah, I also have a phone a friend behind me too, so for questions on business.
Okay. Any questions for Juliet? Okay, we will move to institutional effectiveness. Isam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your giving me a few minutes to talk about something the president mentioned and we had talked about in the past, which is creating a intentional, comprehensive, concise set of comparators for the institution, which we can use across the board for multiple things. So just to, and we need that partly to kind of measure ourselves against not just ourselves, but others, but also on certain specific metrics that you saw. And get some best practices for those who are left in the class. Right now, where we are, it's a hodgepodge to some extent. The National Center for Education Statistics, which is part of the Department of Education, it lumps us together with about 30 different institutions. It's random to some extent. At the same time, we also have OCCA and HEC, which, as you saw, they combine us with everybody else in the state. So why we need it? One, we have to measure ourselves against others. It is also good practice in any industry. And finally, it is a requirement for accreditation. One of the things about the accreditation requirement is this, that they want us, they strongly recommend that those institutions not be limited to just one state. We have to have several states in that grouping, and that's what we were kind of attempting to do. So that's where we are right now. Where we want to go is to have a single set of comparators for all purposes covering several states so that it accomplishes what accreditors ask us. We choose those comparators based on certain objective criteria, which is made by dependable third parties. We have metrics which are clearly defined, and this becomes a challenge, especially if it is cross-state. Every state has its own thing, as you heard. Certainly would like to have flexibility to add more metrics over time, including something that you heard about at the last meeting, which is eventually getting to a point of comparing composite financial indexes. The good thing is that going forward, starting this year, the national collection, the IPEDS collection, is collecting data across the country on things which make up the CFI, the composite financial index. So we'll be able to do that as well. And finally, this allows us to be part of a pack, but also find institutions which are best in class in certain metrics so that we can kind of get there. And very important for a taxing authority, right now, I don't expect any additional taxpayer money. Want to make sure. So what has happened so far is I've worked with some of our institutional research folks, and James Robinson is one of our new institutional research analysts. He has been helpful in gleaning some of that institutional information. Right now, we have chosen 13 institutions, including institutions from Washington and Idaho as well, to create that baseline. They are certainly not identical. Other than identical twins, I don't think anybody's identical. They are similar institutions based on certain objective criteria. One, geography and census designation, again, made by the government itself. Two, accreditation. They're all members of NWCCU. Three, the scope of offerings. They're all comprehensive community colleges which have transfer, technical workforce, and adult ed. And finally, the headcount range. You're choosing institutions which go from 1 to 10,000 headcount unduplicated. And the reason for that stretch, you saw some of it earlier in what the president was presenting, that in the past, just in the past couple of years, some of these institutions have just jumped from the middle, which was up to 5,000 into the 5 to 10,000 range. We want to make sure we accommodate for them. As for the metrics, what we're looking at is again a set which is quantifiable and defined by the NCES. So we are expecting to cover 4 broad areas. 1, student success. For example, retention rates, part-time, full-time, and disaggregated if we could get it. 2, affordability and access. One of those examples is how many of unduplicated head-counted students are Pell recipients. 3, fiscal soundness. One of the examples is, one of the metrics is dependency on tuition and fees. And you know that when enrollment goes up and down, we want to keep that fiscal sound. That's part of the comparison too. And finally, inclusion and diversity. A couple of things we are looking at where information is available is percentage of ethnic minorities in both the student body and the employee pool compared to the demographics that we see. And as time moves forward, we want to be able to expand to more metrics as we review them for consistency with our own priorities. One challenge that you run into, and we have again talked about it in the past, is for these national numbers, there's a time lag. Right now, the time lag is from the time we give it to the Department of Education to the time it's published in public, it's about 1 to 1.5 years. That's a lifetime in politics and economics anymore. What we're looking at, starting with that, is kind of shortening the time lag with having one-on-one data sharing agreements for these aggregated data sets. So no personal information involved with those 12 or 13 colleges. There is a model there that Yakima and Washington uses. It's a thing that when you give it to the Department of Education, also send it to the other institutions, exchange. The president has promised me that he is going to push for it and eventually sign those, so I'm going to push it for it. But once we have those data sharing, that time lag can be cut down to a maximum. So that's what I'm hoping to do. The next time I update you on this, these are things I plan to have. Names of those institutions. the list of the first round metrics that we'll be looking at. The most recent available comparison of those first round of metrics and more information in the data sharing agreement. And again, I want to leave you with this, that this is a start, this is not the finish. We have, all in all, we are looking at about, there's an availability of about 6 or 7 dozen of these metrics. So we want to be intentional as to where we go. What is it? Some things are not in, other things maybe. So next time you come over, I'll have more information. You'll have the names and some of those other. And with that, I'll tell you the same disclaimer I do. I'll take easy questions, hard ones.
All right, who would like to start with the first easy question? I got a hard question for you. No, I'm just joking. No questions for Isam? Isam, just a general question. Where do you see qualitative data fitting into the data set? And in your view, how reliable would it be, and to what degree could it impact instructors' practice, if you will, when they see that qualitative data from students, for example?
Very important, as I see it. And for that one, we already have some kind of a baseline built up in the sense that we do participate in a couple of nationally normed surveys. When we get this, and the nationally normed surveys do tell us, well, nationally, this is where you are. These are the best people. These are the best institutions. These are the key findings. The SESI and the SESI surveys and SENS surveys, which are both produced by the University of Texas. One of them is for everybody, random sample, and the other one is for incoming students. Those are good starts. My visioning is this, that if we get to a data sharing agreement like this, we can add in a part about if you guys are doing if you are doing SENS and SESI, why don't we share with each other as soon as we send it to them? That could be a possibility, and that does inform teaching very well, I think. The institution I came from, that was part of a lot of the evaluations. Not recommending that, don't get me in the but I mean, the possibility.
Thank you. Other comments or thoughts or questions? Thank you, Isam. All right, we are now in area 8, which is a combination. Excuse me. Thank you. Nessa, you are very important. You're my right hand here this evening. We are now at the College Update Foundation. Please forgive me.
Thank you, Vanessa. No. Thank you, board. So first of all, I would just like to start with thanking our amazing donors and supporters. Just in the past month since we saw you, we have received $618,870.90. I showed you a breakdown that we had a planned gift of $541,000, and we've had $34,000 in scholarships, those pass-through funds, and $39,000 in unrestricted funds, and $3,000 in project funds. Also, we are managing now in our endowed scholarship funds that are invested $17,755,737. And as the foundation, we're up about 3 million from where we were last year. And so it's exciting to just continue to invest and watch those investments grow and just have the wonderful support of our donors and funders. Before the end of the year, we anticipate awarding an additional $140,000 in scholarships. And we have accepted a cash offer for the 360-acre parcel of this 2 Stringer Gap parcels for $400,000. And so we're looking forward to that closing and being able to start passing through those funds to Grants Pass High School students. And in the future, we're looking forward to bringing together the Road Community College Foundation Board and the RCC Board for a mix and mingle.
Good, wonderful. Thank you, Cass. Very, very informative and such great news. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, now we'll move on to area 8, which is board action and information. So the first topic is the monthly financial data report. And I think, Wendy, you were going to, you are.
Take all easy questions. Reserve all hard. Lisa is not with us this evening, so you do have your financial report or summary as part of your packet. If you have any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so. Otherwise, I'll field the questions and get back to you in a timely manner.
All right, so questions for Randy of finance. All right, hearing no questions, then we will move to the action items. And I think it might be helpful if a person just to make a motion would sort of group them into that area. So, or do we want these to be
Kind of two
individual?
pretty two separate things.
So
So
we'll do A, B separately and C separately?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'll move that we approve the 2024-2025 district budget committee members as presented.
All right, it's seconded by Roger, moved by Vanessa. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed no. Abstentions, motion carries unanimously. All right, so we have a district budget committee and we're happy that we have filled all of the spots on the committee, and thanks to Jennifer is our most recent addition to that. Okay, the second action item.
So I'll move to approve the 2025 Community College legislative priorities.
I'll second that.
Moved by Jonathan, seconded by Vanessa. You've had a opportunity to read them. Are
We
there
talked quite a bit
questions?
about them last month.
We did.
also.
Questions, Vanessa? Indra?
I just have some discussion and, so words matter and, I would say when I spoke earlier about reaching out with community and them talking to us, a little bit has to do with, on this resolution. And I'm specifically talking about, when you go down to the be it resolved part, the 150 million for the Oregon Opportunity Grant. I agree totally with all of this. I just think part of the disconnect with the community, from what I understand, is the whole DEI verbiage. And so I'm not insinuating that the college does anything wrong in that aspect or I think it's just a perception that people have just for the verbiage. So for instance, when you put inequities in educational and attainment, like it's so vague, what does that mean? And I think it just triggers people. And so I suggest we just eliminate some of those words that are divisive in our community and triggering. And so in particular, that one's okay, like I'm not, but down further where it says the 1 million for co-requisite supports, and then at the very end, so training, implementation, student success in math during the first year of college, great. And then we add particularly historically underrepresented students. Like I would suggest we just leave that out, because aren't we here to teach all students equally, all equity? Everyone should have equity. And what is historically unrepresented? What does that really mean? I'm very word oriented. So can we spell that out? Like, what does that really mean? And would that ever be used to discriminate against a group of students? That is what my worry is. I'm not saying we do that, and I don't think that we do that. But I think when we put verbiage in like that, it leaves it's open for people to interpret that way and have that perception. And so I don't understand why we can't just stop the first year of college, stop. Like, why do we have to put that in? That could be divisive and controversial. So specifically in that part, And the one above it, not the one above it, the 150 million addressing inequities. Because again, what does that really mean? What kind of inequities and for who? And I think when we just leave that out, it's perceived that it's for all students, everybody. And that's, I just wanted to voice my concern with that verbiage. And then
Right? I would say that those phrases are trigger phrases that cause people to land on one side of the discussion or argument. As compared to other words or phrases in the document. So I agree. I don't know that I agree to remove them, but I do know that in today's modern wired world, people do get worked up over phrases like this. A question I would have, given that this is an OCCA resolution, that we would be promoting these priorities, I wonder out loud what challenge it might face for Rogue Community College to have a resolution that is different from the other resolutions, potentially 16 resolutions that might be signed by other boards. So that's just a question. And I don't know that any one of us knows the answer to that. Pat, would you like to weigh in?
I think it'd be hard to trying to wordsmith 7 different resolutions from or 17 different resolutions from 17 different colleges. People spent some time on this, Indra, thinking about it. And it's, of course, we're spread from here to Klamath Falls to Ontario to Portland, and there's a lot of people thought about the wording exactly like it is. And I understand your concerns, but I'm not sure if it's, I'm pretty sure I'm not smart enough to carry that water. I know what you're saying. I don't disagree with you, but I would have a hard time trying to push that through.
So I think hearing what Pat said, it feels like if I were a legislator and I was being lobbied to promote a bill, it would be confusing to know, wait a minute, RCC isn't promoting this in the same way that the other, well, what does that mean? And it causes some maybe lessening of the effect of the boards doing that. But Maria, you had a comment?
Yeah,
question?
I do. I think that our job is to find out what it means for our students, when we talk about inequities, what does that look like for our community? That's going to look very different than other community colleges. So we use this language as a way to be able to speak about something that is going on in every single community, but that looks different in every single community. So I think I'd love to hear from the college. I have an idea of there's income inequalities, there's, challenges of transportation. There's all of these challenges that our students face, and those are going to be really different than if you're at you may have something else. So we use a language like inequities to sort of bridge some of those unique circumstances in each community. So I'll just advise us and encourage us to not get triggered by these words. It's our job to find out what that means for our communities and not feed whatever that knee-jerk reaction is. So I'll just say that. And I think the same for the language of underrepresented. When I see that, I think there are far more women in community colleges than men. That is an underrepresented field. What are we doing to attract young men into colleges? So I think my point, and is not to argue or debate this, but to encourage us to sidestep. These can be, DEI, underrepresented inequalities can be catchphrases in this really political climate that we're in. And I don't want to welcome those arguments into this boardroom. I want to say, what does this mean for us? And then understand that we use these phrases because we're talking about a statewide initiative?
From the committee side, OCCA's legislative committee, these are existing programs. And so it's additional funding to stuff that the college has been running for years in most of these cases. So we have a track record of how we operate, and the committee side of this thing is to increase funding for these successful programs that have been impacting students and our colleges.
So Jonathan, are you saying that even the definition of these bolded phrases could be language that already exists?
There's rules that are already set and have been set for years.
So this is not new language?
Yeah, like the opportunity grant. I mean, this is I don't know how many years that's been in place, but this is an ask that we were asking the legislature to increase the funding for a program that is already in place.
I really appreciate Marie, you think about these terms, but really applying it to us and thinking about how widespread we are, and that transportation is a huge gap, and that when you represented, I thank you for putting that into a new perspective for me. I really appreciate it.
And I believe that women are have a majority in numbers at colleges and universities for over a decade. It isn't something that happened recently. It's been a long term, because they get offered jobs that are paying jobs and decide to skip college. Right? So that's a good example. Thank you, Maria, for raising that. Any other yes.
I understand that there are programs and funds that we want and need, not disputing that in any way. By Isam's own talk earlier about we want to be put in the basket with colleges that are like us. We're not like Portland. OCCA, by Pat's definition, crafts this for the entire state. So we are put in that basket, and we're not like that basket. And then I guess I would just say the OCCA, by its own admission, the input for this language in large part comes from their DEI committee. And so that's in large part. We're seeing now that a lot of schools and businesses are doing away with DEI programs, not because the intent was not good, not because they aren't helping underserved kids, but because it is divisive, and it's seen as discriminatory and even racist in some areas. So I'm just bringing that out. The fact that I'm uncomfortable even bringing it up, it tells you that how, triggering and divisive it is. And so all I'm suggesting is that where we can, that we just, put a stop to some of the words, and the bulk will mean the same thing. It means the same thing, but without the divisiveness. That's all I'm promoting. That's all I have to say.
I would offer, if I can, I think we have looked at inequities and outcomes for generations. It's just how we address it and what we call it. The examples that were used, other areas we look at inequities and outcomes. How do our students who receive Pell perform to students who don't receive Pell? How do our adult populations succeed compared to our traditionally aged populations? How do students in this program compare to students in that program? So when we start saying equitable outcomes, are they performing at the same level on metrics like that? I think it is absolutely an issue that has become very divisive, but it is incumbent upon us. That's why they ask us to look at disaggregated data and to be able to tell our story. Who's performing at what level and who's not, and what might you do about it? It has become very politicized for a variety of different reasons. I appreciate, Maria, your comments saying we keep it out of this boardroom, but I will use a hypothetical here. If we find that students who register in the last 72 hours before term underperform compared to their peers inequitably, then we don't want to change registration processes to prevent them from allowing to do that, because we're harming them by giving them. And so that's when we look at equitable outcomes, is like, what things do we have at our institution that are preventing And maybe it's our processes, it's maybe our access to our programs, transportation. What you see a lot of information on across the country right now, the greatest predictor to inequality is the rural urban divide for a variety of reasons. Access to transportation, access to levels of education. And so how do we narrow that gap? And I think about us being a rural serving institution, we would be doing our region a grave disservice if we weren't looking at that data in that way and say, how are students from Prospect and Butte Falls and Cave Junction performing compared to their peers from Medford and Central? And that is looking at equitable outcomes. And how are they performing? What programs are they going into? And so it is incumbent upon us to look at it, but if we can look at it in a way that is constructive to how we serve our community, it's gonna serve everybody well. So I would just reiterate probably what Maria, what your point was, is it's how we define these things local, and we don't allow other people to define them for us.
So if the funding came to the college, we would be able to define what inequities in educational attainment means to.
We'll always set our own institutional
So that-
priorities. You know, there hypothetically, somebody could say, well, we prioritize this and we're put funding at that. We're gonna decide whether that's a priority for us to pursue. But if they're gonna make Oregon Opportunity Grant more available, and we know historically rural students go to community college at a rate higher than urban, then we want them to have access to as much funding as possible, so they'll attend our institution.
I think I would have an issue if this was written to say this money for this particular population only, right? And that to be prescribed at that level, and I don't see that. I see that the language is very open to communities get to define where they have where the issue, where, you know, who needs help and at what level, so.
So Andrea, thank you for, for voicing your point of view. So it's a brave thing to do that. Thank you.
And I appreciate everyone's.
Good. Is there anything that, it sounded like you would like to remove those phrases?
Yes, I would advocate.
That's what I thought. And so it would be sort of a friendly amendment, if you will. I want to use Robert's rules and do this in a democratic way.
I think we have a motion.
We don't.
Oh, we don't have a motion yet.
We have a motion to approve it.
Correct.
We are discussing the improvement. We would
Correct.
have to call
But
for a vote right
No,
now
no,
on the.
What I'm saying is that Robert's rules would permit a friendly amendment to your motion by striking the phrase. If the makers of the motion feel that it's friendly, you could accept that, and then it would go to the board for a vote. If you don't feel like it's a friendly amendment, and we would then have to vote on that, we would do that.
I don't want to amend my. motion.
Okay, and that's supported by the second person who made the motion, yes, okay. So we're now left with, here is we're gonna then vote on this motion, so that way everyone has an opportunity to be heard. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing no other discussion. Those in favor of the motion to adopt the 2025 Community College legislative priorities signify by saying aye.
That's presented.
Aye.
Aye, as presented.
As presented.
I
Those opposed?
Okay.
Those abstaining? All right, so let the record reflect that we voted 6 yeses to 1 no, and appreciate the courage to speak your mind and to share that you have a difference of opinion. So, all right, we're going to now move to new program segment of our action items. So we'll take each of these individually then, or grouping. We can group these.
I'll move to approve new programs listed at D, E, and F.
Second.
It's been moved to approve new programs D, E, and F. Jonathan Indra seconds the motion. Discussion on the motion. Hearing no discussion, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
No? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, now we're in another easy part, which is the grouping of program suspensions. So we have 4, actually not, 5,
Well, there's
4 program suspensions, so.
Program, approve the suspension of programs 8D through 8K.
Been moved G through HJ program suspensions. Is there a second?
Second.
Jonathan seconds the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Right, now we're on the last area of our action items, program suspensions and resubmissions. Is there a motion to adopt the 2 K and L as moved by Maria? Your second? Seconded by Vanessa to act on the program suspensions and resubmissions of K and L. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor of program suspensions K and L signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, now we're at the easy stuff of new business. So let me tee this topic up a bit. Recall, I think it was at the December meeting when you shared a number of projects that are sort of due nows. We, in terms of facility maintenance, we need to address some of our building infrastructure, potential spaces for new programs, and you recall that conversation, board members? Generally, okay. So one of the things that Randy did mention last month was if there was a desire to run the bond that, the measure that failed in November of last year, and to rerun that, which would generate approximately 80 million, including grants that we 60 million in taxes plus, and potentially the grant money might be, well, I'm going to include that there was 60 some million in taxes plus the additional grant money around 5 million. Is there any interest on the board? Because if Randy, if we decide as a body that we want to research, we should let Randy and the college know early. There may be other ways to force those projects in a different way. Well, first, I'd like to ask, is there any interest to rerun the measure in the May special election? Okay, I didn't hear anyone wishing to advance a motion. All right, so there are some other ways to do that work. So Randy, let me invite you to share some thinking around how we might chunk those projects into smaller pieces over a long period of time.
Well, given that I'm not overly surprised in the lack of enthusiasm, rerun a May measure, we've started some preliminary work on the last month. What I wanted to do before you made a determination this evening on bond measure was to put in front of you capital projects we felt still need to be prioritized. So right, there are a number of capital projects that we had been putting, kind of aside until we had a determination on a bond measure, which included them and other opportunities. And when we were unsuccessful with the bond measure campaign, it told us, well, we're probably not going to have capacity to go after those other opportunities. And these things we've been putting aside are not going to be able to be addressed to the same level or scope. But nonetheless, there are things in order to respond to our community's demand for the education we provide that we think need to be pursued. And so I tried to introduce those to you last month in context as part of the workshop to say, here's some capital things that we're going to try to bring in front of you. So what I would like to do is next month, as part of my president's report, Lisa and I will tag team a little bit, revisiting what those projects are, why they're important for us moving forward, putting aside that we also want to look at a more comprehensive facilities master plan that we can include the community that will kind of be the precursor to a future bond measure. So we anticipate going back out for a bond down the road, but realizing that that's not on the horizon. Some of these projects, the most obvious candidate we've talked about over and over again is our currently approved transportation technology grant from the state that requires a match. But that's a piece of this puzzle. So what I want to do is bring that forward. Lisa and I have been doing some work behind the scenes in anticipation of this conversation to say, here's how we might fund these projects on a modified scope, and a potential timeline. It would include what might be included in a capital campaign. So Cass and her team can go out and start working and saying, this is the work of the college moving forward. How interested in supporting it might you be? Community member XYZ, pursue grants. So it's part of a larger thing, but we need to bring to the board that conversation and make sure we're all on the same page that that's where we want to go. Because I don't want to start engaging architects and community members and as potential funders if the board's not interested in doing the work. So what I would bring to you is next month, here's the projects that we're prioritizing. Here's some options on how we see we could support it. Is there an appetite for one option over another if we're going to move forward, and get some form of an adoption from the board that we're going to pursue this method. It will be contingent upon a couple of things: support, state match, some things that are key there. So my question to you this evening is, in preparation of that work for next month, what might or do you need to see from us? So what we're preparing is to bring back with further detail last month's workshop report. So these are the projects. Here's a little more context on them, maybe how they're modified from what was in the bond. And here's some funding strategies we see for anything else that we can provide in preparation.
Cass, you just did a very successful capital campaign on the other side of the valley. So I don't know if you were planning to do one so quickly in your tenure here, but thank you. Glad you have that skill set. I would love to see a plan that includes the projects and the funding possibilities, including what could be community, what is going to get funded where, and also a strategy for how those phases sort of set us up to some future asking that, some future ballot measure to ask the taxpayers to support this effort. So something phased, and what would be a reasonable ask to the taxpayers for a particular project.
Sounds excellent. I think that's wise to be able for the board to see here are some scenarios that could work, and adding a multi-phased approach as well could be sort of, here was what phase one could look like, here's what phase two could look like, and at least the board then could land on some guidance on what phase one. So sounds like, yes.
I think I'm hearing the fact that this is going to combine new projects along with some maintenance issues that Greg brought to us several months ago. I want to make sure we're seeing everything. In this next presentation.
Everything's a big umbrella. So what I can say in response to that, I think is right. So part of what Greg brought forward was here's how we're looking at our maintenance and ongoing costs of our facilities. And when we tackle some of these capital projects, we have the opportunity to have two birds with one stone to say, okay, because we're going in here working on this area, we're also going to address this deferred maintenance that if we didn't address the area, we still have the deferred maintenance costs. So the project might encapsulate, deferred maintenance. A lot of those ongoing capital things are strategies we build into our budget. So we don't have a deferred maintenance that is under leverage. But I will say the lion's share of what you'll see, you saw last month, again, is further developing this campus, the Table Rock campus, where we have tens of thousands of square feet that are raw space, a building we just acquired, the center of a building, the building we're in now, and better leveraging that to support students and operate the college. So there would be the inclusion of some square footage as part of this work, but it would, I think you said include, I hope maybe if we could meet in the middle and say, it would recognize that there's still a plan to address
I
those
just
things.
don't want to ignore the deferred maintenance. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's-
an easy thing to do because it's not bright and shiny.
Yeah, I will just say, regardless, we refuse to ignore that, that's part of the strategy. We just think, we're positioned right now and there's enough need right now that we can do a modified version or at least a piece of this in a way that allows, until we tackle this transportation technology, we're not going to be eligible for the next state grant project, and our needs are, they're not shrinking, they're growing. So we this is an important project, but we also want to clear the deck of it so we can be ready for that next project that'll be on the horizon. The longer we sit on those approved projects, the less frequently we can go back for that state. So we cost ourselves literally tens of millions of dollars of capital opportunities by doing that.
Exciting meeting coming up.
It is, it's an exciting one.
And I apologize. I think I said I would do it as part of my president's report, but I think we'll need to do it as new business. So that way there can be a motion and acknowledgement of it.
All right. Then we'll move on then to old business, and we don't have any old business that's planned for tonight's meeting. So I would entertain that we move on to the consent agenda.
That we approve the consent agenda, A, B, and C in one motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, motion carries unanimously. All right, we're at the round table.
I have one thing for round
Yes,
table.
go ahead.
I'm been working really hard to try to find a time when I can take one of the public meeting law trainings, and are all during my work day. And I'm just wondering if we could do a little exploration into an evening. They're happening somewhere around the state that I could hop into, or just
I got an answer for you, Vanessa.
ready.
Okay, I've been nagged is the right term, by Kate Lasky, the library director, to have go through the public meeting law for me. So you go out to the state site and you look forward in this calendar for what's available classes. They're all full through May and they haven't scheduled any. So I talked to Karen Smith, the OCCA attorney. She's going to get licensed and approved to do this class this summer. You only have to do it sometime in the course of the year, so don't fret. And trust me, as your OCCA representative, I will be on your front door telling you when to get signed up.
Okay, thank you, Pat. I appreciate that.
I think you are not in unique, that it conflicts with the work schedule. And so I imagine Karen will probably be able to provide one for the working board members across the state.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Or even an asynchronous one that I could just work my way through.
For efficiency.
Just
Credit for prior learning.
Credit for prior learning.
It's important to
Yes.
remind us all that, is it during our term of
Yes.
office?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
during our term that we need to complete that training. All right, anyone else want to jump in for roundtable?
Thank you for hitting that.
Yeah.
Because that's also my,
It's on your ass.
So I only have one thing, and I am involved in a number of community organizations, and last evening, in this community organization, I discovered that someone that I in this event with is an RCC student. And so without any prompting, this person said, I just have to tell you how much I love RCC.
Oh.
It is such a welcoming, inclusive place. I feel people care about me. They know who I am. And I'm so happy. I want to at some point go to a four-year school, but I just wanted to let you, Andy, and fellow board members and staff who are here know that this place is very special. So, and you already know that. So if there is no other business then, and thank you to the college for presenting us with these nice gifts of appreciation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Rochelle. Okay, then we will be adjourned at 6:19.
Appreciate us for your appreciation.